Hey folks, welcome back to Game Garbage, where we take a look at games, chat about the gaming news of the industry, and of course, stream for fun. Today we're going over Elden Ring. This is NightReign. This was part of the closed beta test that I was able to be a part of, which was great. I mean, it was great to be able to test it, but I'm going to be going over kind of what my experience was like, what I liked about it, what I don't like about it, and then we're also going to go over like the pricing of the game and then my final thoughts at the end related to the game, other types of games that FromSoftware has had, and maybe even a different direction that FromSoftware is looking at going when Miyazaki actually moves on. So you can always like, sub, all that jazz, but hey, let's go ahead and get into this. So being able to play the beta, this is, again, just over my own personal experience. I didn't play with any other friends or anything. I just did randoms the whole time, and I was roughly able to play about 2 hours out of all of the sessions. I tried to get more play time, but I was able to have several different sessions in there, which was nice. I was playing on Xbox, just FYI. But yeah, this is definitely not the FromSoftware that we know. This is just a very different feel, completely different. And it's just like a totally different type of style. And everything, too, is also kind of like rewritten or like recoded for gameplay and mechanics. Like it all feels familiar, but it's very, very different from what we're used to. And so, yeah, let's start with the good. It plays like Elden Ring. I mean, the mechanics, the movements. We were able to play in Limgrave for the test, basically. So, yeah, everything kind of looks the same. Not everything is in the same place. Things are kind of like sprinkled around. So there's like a RNG, if you will, that kind of like randomizes, recreates, adjusts where gear and bosses are, or what type of bosses are going to be in the game, or what type of boss you'll get, because you'll play two or three. I think you play three, and then you get the final boss at the end, and all of it is like basically randomized. Now your class, you able to pick between four. There's basically like a warrior, someone that's able to have like a rapier, and then a heavy class, and then also like a mage. And so those are the four classes that we have. We do know that there will be a total of 8 classes that you'll be able to kind of choose from. Man, these are very set in their ways. These are not like you can really adjust much around. There are relics that you can collect and give permanent buffs, or like kind of like benefits to your class, but they're very specific for their types of slots. They're all color coded, and so you have to get the right type of colored relics to be able to put with the type of class that you want. And it is important to actually level up all of these, and to be searching for these types of items, because you may not be able to pick the class that you want. They don't allow any duplicates. So if there's going to be 3 of you that are playing, one of these is not going to be actually played. And every single test that I had, no one picked the mage. Everybody, everybody was everyone else, which was kind of hilarious. But yeah, there were 4 different classes. I really enjoyed the heavy, much slower movement, much kind of like beefier tanking with the shield, and stronger hits and attacks and stuff, which was nice, and kind of slower attacks, but like it's easier to stun. And that's just how I play. I love to play the actual tank and the heavy, and I love to be the rock that the water breaks upon, and support my team. It's a blast for me. I just love being able to do that. But yeah, most people like to kind of like the rogue / warrior, or like the duchess in the game. These are kind of like middle of the road kind of classes, with the speed that they have and the agility and the damage that they can do. So yeah, once you learn the game, it's very, very fluid, but it is kind of a bit of a learning curve. But you'll notice with everything, like the circle slowly getting smaller, teams of 3, kind of like having a world that you're open in, is kind of pretty much open, and you're able to like collect different weapons and gear, and take down different enemies and stuff, or quote different teams like in other games. It very much kind of reminds us of like a battle royale type of game, but as far as we know, there's no invaders. It's just you and your team versus NPCs and bosses in the game. So it's very much like a roguelite with, like a dungeon runner. And that is the complete premise of the game. But yeah, once you do learn the game mechanics, you get to decide where you go ultimately. The game is designed so that your movement is very, very quick. And so you're able to hop, skip, and jump over verticals pretty quickly. You're able to just run by like sites of grace to be able to level up or like regain your flasks again. Everything is predetermined by your class on how you're going to level up in the game, so that basically you just have to like tick up the number as many times as you can and then click OK. So yeah, everything is very streamlined and intuitive in that sense. And everything is about being as efficient as possible because, again, you're on a time limit. Because ultimately, you're going to have a certain amount of time before you get your first boss, and you're going to have 3 of those, and then the end game is, of course, the final boss, and you better be leveled up as much as you can, along with the rest of your teammates. So yeah, it's all about efficiency. It's all about trying to get as many kills as you can, level up as much as you can, get the best type of gear that you can before you go into the final fight. Like, everything hinges on how efficient you are with leveling up and how well you're able to work together with the rest of your team. And so these two things play really heavily into your overall experience with the game. But yeah, we'll get into that in just a second. But yeah, you're able to find like sites of grace in the game. You're able to find weapons, and the sites of grace aren't necessarily to save. They're really just to like level up and get your flasks back. But there are different weapons you can get. There are different chests. There's the relics again, which are permanent buffs to your character. There's also different items too. And then there's ways to like dispel poison and all of this kind of different stuff. So, but those are kind of more just like picking up items in patches of flowers or leaves or whatever as you find them in the world. So yeah, everything is really, really streamlined. And all, again, it looks all very similar. You're going to recognize armor sets or shields or weapons and stuff. Something that is cool too is that you can actually level up your weapons as well. If you're able to find a forge and you have the resources, then you can level up your weapon and make it more powerful, which is huge for the boss fight. It's going to definitely give you a leg up on that. All in all, if you play a full session, get through all 4 bosses roughly, this is probably going to take you, 40 to 50 minutes, somewhere in there for each session. Again, yeah, everything is streamlined. There's really not even any animations to pick up anything or to do anything. It's just all magically done for you. So again, everything is streamlined to the nth degree in the game to be able to get through it all. So yeah, everything too hinges really on your team, and this can be a good or a bad thing. Because yeah, if your team is kind of frustrating, people are going to be kind of more incentivized to quit. But if you're working really well with your team, if you have someone that leads and the rest are willing to follow, for the better of the team, then yeah, you can have a wonderful experience. And that was one of the games that sessions that I had was, I just completely clicked with the team. We had someone that was actually placing beacons on the map so that we kind of knew where to go, and they were leading us as a team. They were calling out the game basically, and we got all the way to the final boss, which that was the only time out of my session. But yeah, we got all the way to the end boss and died very, very quickly because, again, we didn't level up enough. We didn't have too much trouble with the other bosses. But yeah, getting to the actual end boss, it was pretty challenging. Like, our whole team died, I think, basically within the first, 90 seconds. It was extremely fast. There is also a map, of course, as I've mentioned, but yeah, it shows you important locations. It shows you areas where you can get relics, where you can upgrade some stuff. And yeah, the nice thing, too, I just want to make sure I mention is that the relics are permanent. So yeah, once you find these relics, you can add them to your character class wherever you'd like to fit them. Again, they're all color-coded, so you can't put red where blue is supposed to be. That's not going to work. But yeah, all of these are kind of randomized in their buffs as well, it looks like. Sometimes there's a buff to your abilities or your cooldowns, which you have those too, by the way. So like when you really need to dish out a ton of damage or maybe try to stagger, you have these kind of like special abilities. You have one that's, again, kind of like a lighter special ability, and then you have a heavier special ability. And the special ability takes like a few minutes to actually fill back up so that you can use it again. But yeah, these are actually quite powerful, which is nice. So yeah, let's go ahead and dig into the bad. And everything is on the timing. everything. And so you'll learn the map locations. You'll race against the clock every time that you play. You're keeping track of the circle that's closing in on you. And yeah, the entire thing is all about efficiency. Now, some people are really going to click with this, and some people are just absolutely going to hate this. Because yeah, if you're not getting to a certain level basically in the game with you and your team, there's no way you're going to beat the final boss, right? It's basically just going to be impossible. And if you're there to win, or you're there to like finally beat a boss you haven't beat before or get the opportunity, then yeah, some people are more or less apt to quit. And I actually had that in one of my sessions, which was very frustrating. And when this happens, when the person actually quits, the game doesn't scale back for you. The game is scaled, at least during the playtest. It was scaled for 3 people, and we also know for multiplayer, and even with the description to be able to pre-order right now of NightReign, it says that there's only three to 3 players. So we do know there is going to be like a solo type of mode that you can do on your own, which I suggest. You kind of learn how the game mechanics work, how quick you need to be, kind of learn the maps a little bit or the different biomes. But like, it's really going to be pretty frustrating because, again, if someone on your team believes that you're not being efficient enough, or you're not going to be able to get there, and they're more focused on winning than the actual kind of team experience and having a good time, then they're going to be more incentivized to leave. And when they leave, that screws your game. Like it totally screws it, because again, we had that one player leave, and so it was just the other guy and I left, and we struggled the whole rest of the time. There was no way to really level up very much, and yeah, eventually, the circle just closed in, and we got killed. And it was not a fun experience. It really wasn't that enjoyable, and so your game is heavily going to be relied on the type of randoms that you get, the type of team that you have. And again, if you're used to playing with just 2 players, we don't have that option. So you can either play solo or with 3 people, and that's it. I do hope they change that, because and just have some kind of something that's scaled that's in between the middle of solo versus 3. Make the bosses a little bit harder, but not as hard as 3, because yeah, the difficulty with 2 of you when there's supposed to be 3 of you, it feels like a night and day difference, especially at the beginning. So you're kind of hindering and staggering yourself from the very start, and it is just a struggle until you eventually fail, and then you're like, well, that was kind of a waste of time, because again, you didn't really get any relics, you weren't able to really explore much, you weren't able to have a good experience. And when people start figuring out that people get screwed when someone leaves, more are just going to start leaving, and so yeah, your whole session is just going to be cooked. And that's really going to get frustrating for a lot of people. Also, too, the issue with bad connections. Again, you're not necessarily playing with across all platforms, but you are playing with everybody around the world that's basically on your platform. So if your platform's pretty wide and broad, like on PC, you could have connection issues with people, and if they drop or lose connection, well, now you're down a guy, and that sucks. Or like with PlayStation, again, PlayStation is basically sold pretty much all over the place. Xbox is really only sold in America and in Europe, and so usually connections are pretty good there for the most part. So I don't think Xbox has to worry too much about a disconnection issue, but again, it doesn't mean that it can't happen. I just think it's less likely. But yeah, that really is going to get, I think, frustrating for a lot of people. I hope FromSoftware has it in the game where the matchmaking is going to backfill from the queue. So if people are in queue and you lose a guy, those games are going to be prioritized to actually fill in with another person. And hopefully it's pretty efficient, because again, you're all on a time limit. And again, if somebody leaves, other people are just going to quit, and it's not a good experience. And so then too, if you have multiple stacks of these sessions in a row where the team isn't efficient enough, or the team is losing players or connections or whatever, or purposefully quitting because, again, the team is not efficient enough, there's no way we're going to basically make it to the boss. It's really going to be a frustrating experience. And I don't think people are necessarily taking that into account. The reviews that I've watched already so far, none of them have really talked about this. And yeah, I really want to emphasize this, since other channels aren't. Also, if you're used to a certain type of style or gameplay or like type of gear sets in Elden Ring, like incantations and whatever, well, again, you're really going to be limited on that because you're not going to be able to kind of have the gear that you want. It's not like you get to save or collect any of this. It's just whatever you find in the world. And so, again, there's more of an emphasis on actual teamwork or your actual skill level if you're playing solo. And this is going to be, again, a different type of element that I don't think people are going to necessarily enjoy too much. Again, this is definitely made for a particular type of audience, this style of game. But yeah, if you're kind of used to playing your way or having your gear, you've maxed it out to the whatever level, like in Call of Duty or Diablo or Path of the Exile or something like that. And there's some players like that also in Elden Ring. I don't think they're going to enjoy this experience as much because, again, they can't get the type of gear that they want. They don't get to choose or decide it. There's no like choosing your loadout or anything. It's just, hey, if you're good at just finding stuff and making it work, that probably won't be a big deal for you. But for the rest of them, it's going to be a challenge. Again, too, the game is kind of like that battle royale dungeon run feel, and again, not everybody likes these. And the way the game is designed really takes away from what OG players really know from software games. So whether it's Armored Core, whether it's Demon Souls, Dark Souls, Bloodborne, Sekiro, Elden Ring, like it does not play like these games. It looks like the game, and I think it is a different spin on it, and it can certainly be fun. But I'm not sure if there's going to be people that are really going to play a ton of time. There will be a few, of course, but I'm not sure if this is the type of game for the general audience. And we'll get into that a little bit later as well. But yeah, if you're not into battle royales, if you're not into time crunches, you're not into playing with randoms, this probably is not the game for you whatsoever. It's going to be tough. It also kind of feels like this game should have been like a game mode attached to Elden Ring, or should have been a DLC maybe, instead of an entirely independent game in and of itself. And so this is where we get to the price. It's going to be $40 for the game, which I remember mentioning in my own video during the announcement for NightReign. It's like, man, if this game is $50-$60, I think that's going to be too much money. But 40 was kind of a max. I would prefer 30 because I'm not entirely sold on the idea. Even after playing it, like I still had some good experiences, some bad experience. But yeah, again, I think it's going to be pretty challenging, and yeah, that ultimately that's going to be pretty frustrating. So, and then yeah, too, if someone's already picked the class that you really enjoy, or the two classes you enjoy the most are picked, you're going to feel hindered as well by playing, and you're not going to be at your best. And you're going to be playing something you don't really like. And I really feel like too, like the mage class is also hindered because you're not able to refill your Estus for magic, your FP. Like you don't actually get those back necessarily. I personally didn't play the clash, but I did watch somebody that played the mage class, and it's like if you're not able to refill those, it's a really frustrating experience again to try to actually get those. So yeah, so much ultimately is going to depend on your team. There's also no voice chat either, and yeah, the emotes aren't going to be enough. But since there is no cross-platform play for this, it is going to be cross-gen, by the way. But yeah, since there's no cross-platform, if you basically see the people in your game, you can invite them to a party, and even if they don't have a mic, they can at least hear you. So I would encourage players to do that if you're planning on buying this or playing this in the future. Just work on inviting people to a party and see if they show up, because that's at least going to give you a better experience to be able to communicate. And if that is kind of the theme around the community of NightReign, I think NightReign will overall be a better experience because people will just expect it, right? And maybe then they'll want to get a mic or have their mic handy or whatever. So yeah, the base game, as I said, it's going to be $40, and this was kind of the cost of their last expansion for Elden Ring. And there is actually confirmed DLC now, And so we know of one so far that's going to come out toward the end of this year, and it's going to be $15 if you buy it in the bundle. So yeah, the bundle is going to be $55, and I imagine the price. Well, I guess I didn't look at that. The price of the DLC when it comes out, it might be actually 20, so you might save a little bit with the bundle. But yeah, it'll be $15-20 for the DLC. And yeah, the teaser trailer, the research that I did, it showed that there were no future updates or there weren't going to be any DLC for the game. Like it was just going to be a base game. And again, that was also one of my concerns talking about the announcement trailer that we got for NightReign. It's like, okay, if we're only going to have 8 bosses and they're not going to like add more content to the game, the incentive to continue to play is going to be pretty low once you especially beat all 8. Because then it's like, okay, I've done everything. Some of the randoms are kind of frustrating or the team doesn't jive together. I'm done. Like, you're just not going to want to play, right? So now we actually know there's going to be DLC. And in my opinion, I think as long as the game is successful, as long as the game is getting those sales and getting those player numbers, I think FromSoftware will actually have a small team. It would make sense anyway to continue to make DLC for the game until a certain point where they get into full production for their next, really big kind of like AA plus or almost AAA experience, right? Like Elden Ring was. So yeah, I could see more DLC coming for this. The DLC in a way will also separate the player base when it actually releases, because again, people are going to pick up at NightReign and not necessarily enjoy it. And since we don't have cross-platform anyway, that's segregating the gaming community for this game. Again, not everyone's going to like it because they're used to Elden Ring, which again is going to be frustrating. So that's going to neck it down even more. And then when the DLC releases, that's going to continue to kind of neck it down. So if a lot of people don't buy the DLC, something that's going to be frustrating for a lot of players is that they're going to want to play the DLC, but again, they're stuck with a group that didn't buy it, or maybe one person that didn't buy it, and now they're going to have to, again, play the experience they've already played. So I hope there's a way to maybe select like DLC only, or focusing on that type of matchmaking, having that type of segregation in there, because you don't want to keep playing the stuff you don't want to play, in the game. Even with like Call of Duty or some other different games, there's kind of a voting system, or there's different choices that you can get, or you can get into these different playlists. And I hope that they actually do that, because yeah, if you buy the DLC, you want to play the DLC, right? You all do, and yeah, there should be at least a way to kind of dictate what type of playlist or what you're kind of open toward to be able to play. And I'm not sure if they'll do that, because again, this is kind of their first like quote multiplayer game experience that they're making from FromSoftware. And so yeah, we'll see how that goes. We do know that the DLC will have new bosses. We don't know how many, and also playable characters. So I'm curious, how many bosses, how many playable characters? Are these going to be extra classes, or are they going to be cosmetics, or a mixture of both? Honestly, we don't know. You can go to your store right now and look up what the DLC is going to be, and there's not a ton of information there provided, but we do know that it's going to be, that it's not microtransactions. It is going to be an actual DLC, a bundle of content for $15. And it's going to be a one-time purchase. And then, yeah, we're going to have more characters, bosses, and biome elements that are going to be added to the game with the DLC. And exactly how that works and all plays out, we're not sure yet, but we'll probably understand a little more when we get the final release of the game at launch, which is coming in May. So overall, my thoughts, I think the game will appeal to kind of younger audiences, not necessarily older. I think those that are in their 30s aren't going to enjoy it as much. And especially, too, like if you're a really big FromSoftware or Dark Souls fan, you may not like these as much, because, again, the entire stance and everything is completely different. If you're used to, like, Warzone or Fortnite or Apex Legends or something, or something to that kind of avenue, there's a lot of elements you're going to recognize, and it's going to kind of feel like that a little bit, because again, it's all about the time crunch and trying to get the best gear that you can to ultimately get to the end and win. And even though there's no invaders or other players that you're fighting, it's just all NPCs. All of the principle is basically the same. So, yeah, there's definitely some people that do not like this game. There's others that think it's an absolute amazing experience. Two, there's also players that really don't like Dark Souls or Elden Ring, but they like this. And again, it's all catered to kind of like what your preferences are. But I think this is going to be kind of like a interesting point in the From Software discussion in the future of what games were good, and this will kind of be remembered as like a interesting anomaly for From Software. And I wonder too if this is also going to be a possibly new type of staple that they're dipping their toe into and creating some ripples to kind of see what happens. And if it's successful enough, this might be a new type of genre that they continue with in the future. So yeah, that could be pretty interesting. Yeah, I think ultimately this is going to split the audience, and it's going to be a love-hate relationship. And your experiences will probably be like that too. Your game sessions, some of them you're absolutely going to love and enjoy. Like the team that I clicked with, I friended them all. They friended me all back, and we're going to wait until actual release to try to play together again and hang out some. And then other sessions too are just absolutely frustrating, and there's no hope, and you're just screwed for your session, you know. And it can be pretty brutal. I think too it's really frustrating that there isn't going to be any duos. It's either solo or a team of three. So again, not everybody has or is able to schedule with multiple friends. Sometimes it's just you and another buddy. And so yeah, that's going to be pretty frustrating. Hopefully they do correct that, because I think they could include more people in and have a better experience and get people to play longer. Because again, if you keep having random experiences that are frustrating or annoying, you're going to be less likely to play. Not having crossplay, I think, is also, or cross-platform is also a mistake. It probably makes it easier for coding the game or whatever, and also having less bugs. But now you're necking down the pools that you can actually play with, um, and that's going to shorten the lifespan of the game, I think. And when we get to a point where there's really not enough people during certain times of the day to actually keep matchmaking going and to get into a game fairly quickly, like within a couple of minutes or less, I think more and more people, they don't necessarily have the patience. Again, kind of like the generation with the attention span of a goldfish. I think people are going to be less incentivized to play if they have to sit there and they have to wait. So, or at least during certain times of day. And that generally happens with every game. When matchmaking slows down, when it gets harder to actually get in, there is a line where people are willing to wait and kind of go for that, compared to just would prefer to just play something else. I think too, like the whole game experience, while I did enjoy it and I do like and I do appreciate what the team is trying to do, ultimately I feel like it's a DLC or a mode that they just should have added to Elden Ring. So kind of like the Chalice and Bloodborne, for those of you that have played, you could just get a chalice, you could place it down, you could get into your dungeon. Again, it was all randomized, there were different bosses. It feels just like this, just on a smaller scale in solo. And this would just be a larger, bigger multiplayer experience. But again, I feel like it just should have been attached to actual Elden Ring. Like everything looks the same, everything kind of plays the same, the mechanics, the feel for everything. It's like it's Elden Ring, right? But it's just a different genre and a different experience. And again, it's like for some people, it's not going to be worth the $40. Uh, and two, like if they're only willing to do maybe one or two DLCs after this, there's really not a lot of content there to actually do, because you're still going to have less than probably 20 bosses in total. And how long is it going to take you to actually run through all of those? Or possibly have enough frustrating experiences with randoms, you'll just be like, I'd just rather play something else. So yeah, I feel like this shouldn't be necessarily a standalone game. And yeah, I'm kind of curious exactly what they're doing with this, or what the idea is long term. Is if it's successful, will there be more of these? Will there be more DLCs? Will this kind of turn into like a DLC live service game like Destiny did? What's kind of their play or their plan on this? Because again, this doesn't really fit like FromSoftware. It's just awkward. It's just kind of like an awkward thing. And while some people are really going to enjoy it and others are going to hate it, I think we can all agree that this just doesn't feel like FromSoftware. So yeah, it has me curious what things are going to look like in the future. Also, too, the game doesn't really have any story to it. Again, that's a major staple in FromSoftware games. And so, yeah, this is more just like a multiplayer game. So, again, it's like that Fortnite, that Apex, that Warzone. You just hop in and you play, and hopefully you have a good experience. If you don't, try again, kind of a thing. And I think ultimately that's what it's going to feel like. We do know that NightReign is not created by Miyazaki. This is not his project. It's by someone else within the company. And so, feeling out this new genre, but we did have an interview with Miyazaki, is that, he did say, quote, "I think we'll be able to show you a new From Software in many different ways." and and so that's kind of curious. He did say that, quote, "multiple projects with a wide range of genres," and also, quote, "they're going to be handled by different people." And so one of these was, of course, probably NightReign. So we know that, too, they're probably working on another big kind of like Elden Ring 2.0 experience, or maybe another Dark Souls, or maybe something else entirely. But like they're working on another really big project that we all fell in love with, that type of style. So we know we're probably working on those. But NightReign is another one, and maybe they're even working on a third project or a fourth project that we'll get to see later into the decade, or maybe even into the 2030s. So yeah, it has me very curious. Like they're kind of branching out within the studio. I think some of this has to do, of course, with FromSoftware being able to buy the Elden Ring publishing rights from Bandai Namco and actually owning the IP now. We don't know exactly how much they paid for it, but I'm sure it was a pretty penny. But like FromSoftware is directly in control now from Elden Ring. I think they saw how popular it was. Again, it has sold over 25 million copies. So yeah, Elden Ring is extremely successful, and there's definitely an audience for it. So I think they're trying some different stuff. I think they're trying to see what's going to work, what's not, and they're probably going to try different types of styles or different type of genres of gameplay, and again, see what fits and see what they can make money from. And I think too, Miyazaki has done a wonderful thing with FromSoftware since like the 90s. But I think too, we need to understand that eventually Miyazaki's going to retire and someone else is going to take over. And I think it's really important who comes to the head of FromSoftware and directs all of the game projects, because while I think NightReign can be fun, NightReign is not the primary thing that I want. I want more Dark Souls and Elden Ring. Like they do wonderful at those. They do amazing at those. They're fun experiences. I mean, my first playthrough of Elden Ring was 530 plus hours. It was huge. I've played Dark Souls 3 separate times. I've played Bloodborne twice. Sekiro, I get my butt beat, so I haven't beat that yet. But again, I've sunk probably another 30 hours in Sekiro, 20, 30 hours total. So yeah, and I grew up too with the Armored Core series in the 90s. So I mean, I've been playing their stuff forever, and I really enjoyed Armored Core 6, Fires of the Rubicon, that they released a couple of years ago. So yeah, I'm just very curious about what the future is going to look like. I am planning to actually buy this on release in May, and but yeah, it is. I'm more curious about this game than excited. I'll put that. And I think too, if people are kind of on the fence, just wait to see what the game is like for release. Watch people play it. Watch people review it. Take time to watch multiple reviews from the closed beta test, not just mine. Mr. Matty Plays has it out there. Lucas Stevens had a different take on it than Mr. Matty did. And then, yeah, there's some people, or Chaos Lounge is another one. I mean, they've all tried it. They've all played it, and they all have different takes on it too. And I think that's important to look at and get a better feel if this game is really for you or not. Because that's really our job as reviewers, to whatever degree we can do, even though, a small channel here. But it's really to give you the information that you need to make the best decision with your money. Because none of us have infinite money. We all wish we did, but hey, the world just doesn't work that way. So thanks for tuning in, folks. You can always follow me at Gaming Garbage 22 over at YouTube. At Gaming Garbage 22. You can also follow me over at Twitch if you'd like. I do everything there first. And some people prefer to watch it over there. Some people prefer to watch stuff on YouTube. I don't really care, whatever floats your boat. And then also too, like I do kind of reviews like this when I can, or initial looks. We do have a game that you guys vote for every year. That was Chronos, the New Dawn. So when that game releases, I'll be buying that on release and doing a full review of that. And if that game doesn't come out this year, then you guys also voted for it. The number 2 slot, Crimson Desert, and I'll be reviewing that. So you guys can stay tuned for that. I also do gaming news once a week. The idea is just to do the research during the week and consolidate it all into one place, basically an hour podcast to catch you up on the news. And then we also have playthroughs of stuff too. Lion and I, when we have time, we're doing Halo 1 and doing that on Legendary, which is quite fun. And then I'm also going through Tomb Raider 4, 5, and 6 Remaster Collection, Volume 2. I went through Volume 1 and doing number 2 right now, which basically took me all year. So yeah, this will probably take me most of the year as well. And then I release them about once a week on the channel. So yeah, poke around, look at the playlist. It's not for everybody, but hey, thanks for looking, and like and sub if you wish, and 2, share the content if you enjoy it. I appreciate that, getting that boost from the algorithm and from you guys. So with that, folks, thanks for tuning in. We'll see you guys on the next one.